Our next game is going to be Jones in the Fast Lane, which is a...
terrible
what year
game.
did it come out? What year did it come out?
1991, I want to say, maybe 92.
I think it is 91, and maybe there was a later CD version.
Most likely the Sierra game.
Which features all the people from the Sierra mailroom doing some voices. They've got everybody there. The guy who was Cedric, whatever the hell, he's probably in it.
Wonder who
what was the owl's name? Was it Cedric or was it Cecil or was it
Cedric?
Cedric. Okay.
Some of you who are familiar with the Hardcore Gaming on One website might remember an article on this game that I wrote. It's a bad game. Don't play it.
But you can play it for free on the internet.
Yeah, if you hate yourself.
But so let's explain what this is. I mean, it literally is. It's a board game. It's a virtual board game, and it's basically like if you've played the Game of Life, which I understand is a pretty popular game around the world, not just in North America. But if you play the Game of Life, this is kind of like the Game of Life, except there's a little bit more kind of super abstract sim elements to it. But also, it's really cynical. It is a very, very... I would say it's a dark game. I'd say it's more like but it is a depressing game. Would you guys agree with me on that?
Yeah, I'd say you're right. It's just so much of a dredge, I guess is the word. Like, you're basically doing everything you would probably need to do in real life. I mean, it's not like The Sims where you have stuff like genies or man-eating plants or vampires. It's just a slog.
So, this here Jones in the Fast Lane game is, like a Stanley Milgram-esque torture experiment invented by Sierra in their mad labs in the depths of, like, Alcatraz or whatever. Maybe that's overselling the game, but, my God, it's just so cruel. Oh, God.
It's the one Sierra game where you kind of wish you could die and you can't. That's
No.
That's way to put it.
You can only lose all your money before, like, a relative pulls a Deus Ex Machina and wires you, like, $500 just to get back on your feet. And I think, like, they tell you to go get a job as well if you do that. So they, like, add insult to injury because you suck. And it just keeps on going and going like this. And you're probably not going to get ahead because that jerk computer Jones is probably playing the game like you'd expect an AI to play it.
But you don't have to have him in.
Yeah,
I don't. You can control how difficult he is, isn't it? I think you could choose.
Yeah. He has difficulties.
The problem is, if you don't have him, the game's basically pointless.
Assuming you're not playing with other human players, which I think...
This game really was designed to play with other humans, and I will go briefly into a personal anecdote about this game, because I actually originally played this game way back in 99, 2000, somewhere around there, like with a few friends, actually in the same room on like a floppy disk, we actually put in the disc, we loaded the game up, and it was actually pretty fun at that time.
Real quick, Cal. You can't affect the other players, right?
Not really. I don't remember any serious way to affect.
You can
other
wait
players.
until it's their turn, and then you just start
you just wail on them,
making fart noises and stuff in the room, and they
I
have to be on the same computer.
There might have been some I don't know if the stocks or any of the systems in the game can be affected by another player being blocked off by someone doing something else. I can't quite remember. I don't know if you can share the same job, possibly. I'm trying to remember. You might not be able to have the same career as all the other players.
We were talking about this earlier. It's just kind of pointless as a board game. You can't really affect anyone else.
Well, I think that's not a fair enough statement, since a lot of board games aimed at younger children are certainly, you don't really affect other players.
Chutes and ladders, right? It doesn't matter what you do in there.
You just roll dice and it's I got eaten.
But Sorry, right? Sorry is built around...
But it's also almost accidental, because obviously you're only driven by a dice. You really can't... You can choose, I think, to move a certain pace, but other than that, you don't really have a lot of, a real control. And there are other board games where you don't really... They're, mostly solo experiences. Don't ask me to name them, though. I can't really.
Well...
Mostly solo experience describes so many things in my life.
Well, I would say that you could just one play Jones, just to get a feel of the game and like how to learn to play it, how to game it and whatnot. At least I would ideally suggest this, but the game also has a real random screw you element to it. Where, like, the economy can just, like, tank, you lose your job for no reason, and Wild Willie the burglar just steals everything from your pocket or from your bank account, and then you're left penniless because the game decided that it wanted you to lose. It's
We should note that we had a mutual friend of the show, X Factor, actually hosted a game of this with us, and that happened to him multiple times.
Yeah, he had a real problem with willies.
Yeah, I was the one winning that game, and I got horribly depressed over it, so that should tell you how much fun value there is to this overall.
I mean, I think this game's interesting because it's almost like, this game, like, when it came out, like, what, like 93, 94? Like
91, actually.
Like 91. 1991, you think about that time period, this game was perfectly reasonable. Like, everything sort of made sense. Like, oh, you just get a job, get an education, you'll be fine. Now if you play it in, like, 2016 or it's just like, oh, everything is completely different, like, economically now. It's just like, wow, this sure is... Now I'm just sad about where the life is going.
It depends on what you're looking at. Like, you look at I don't know what it was like in Australia, but look at the unemployment rates for 1991, 1992 in the United States, and
I don't make a habit.
Yeah, I know you don't, but I'm just saying, like, it was not like a particularly better time to live.
I think it was just perceptually, like, people were under the impression it was better.
Therefore, it must have been better.
Yeah. I also think, like, this game is... I don't think this game is aimed at adults, really. Like, I mean, we're all adults.
Really?
And, like, no, I don't think it is. I think it's, I think it really is aimed at more... like, younger audiences. I don't know what Sierra said about it specifically.
I know that every kid I knew in 1991 would love to play a game called Jones in the Fast Lane.
See, but the thing is, like, the way the game is, like, presented, like, it's all fun and colorful and not, like, really very harsh. I could totally see, you know, parents who are, like, worried about, like, oh no, Jimmy's gonna learn how to murder aliens in his alien murder game. Like, they would totally be like, oh, it's a nice game where you get a job and an education, you can play that one.
Right, except it teaches you, like, the futility of effort.
Yeah, like
that. It's like, it's a much more destructive game in terms of, like, its effect on the player.
To be fair, you know, like, Earthbound looks really colorful and kid-like from a glance, and then you get all the way to the end of the game, and then you have this nightmare red hell void called Gigas giving everyone nightmares forever. So
yeah, but who's gonna get to the end of that game? That's an effort.
Alright, fine, that's a bad example. I mean, you know, Jones is what it is from the start and just stays what it is all throughout,
like,
but
just... I'm sorry I'm so harsh on this. It's just basically a pointless game.
Well, I mean, no, as you said, it teaches you the futility of life. They could easily... You know, like, look, why go to, like, 4 years of a philosophy degree if you can just load up Jones in the Fast Lane, you know? It's your ticket to understanding.
It does have a point. It's just not a very nice one. It's like watching a German theater art house film to understand, like, you know, the ways of life and love, but not necessarily to enjoy it. Because, like, everyone's dead at the end. It's something like that.
I hope you're not calling this, like, Irreversible the video game.
I was thinking more like Antichrist by Lars von Trier, actually, but...
So here's a question. Are there any games remotely like this that have done better, except The Sims, I guess? That's close enough.
Well, yeah, I would say if you've seen the movie War Games, there's global thermonuclear war, which, much like Jones in the Fast Lane, will teach you that the surest way to win is not to play.
He's right.
But then that's you to not play life, basically. That's a bad...
No, but it's not. It's nothing like it. It is a satirical take on life, and I guess the silver lining to this cloud is it's not. It's worse than real life is. Like, doing nothing on the weekend doesn't really cost you money in real life. What it does is it costs you opportunity, but it doesn't cost you money. You know what I mean? Like, you're not.
Yeah, like,
the game is set up to be ridiculously cynical.
It clearly is like, it's either deliberately, it could be accidentally cynical to remain challenging, because obviously the game wouldn't work if it's just like 99% of the time it's like your week goes by, everything's pretty much fine.
Well, I mean, it might be an example of just dissonance in like who was making the game. Like somebody's intent might have been to make a deliberately difficult and cynical game, whereas somebody else who worked on the game later was to make a more fun game that people could play. And the guy who wanted to make the game fun just failed completely. But that would make it a lot like the other major life and commerce game that it's patterned off of, or besides the game of life, would be the game of Monopoly, which was originally designed to be a like anti-capitalist screed of a comment. It was just, its original incarnation was called the Landlord game, and it was the point of it was that we should, in the United States, should change its tax code such that it taxes property ownership above income generation, which would depower landlords in major urban areas and therefore make life easier for the working folks. I'm not sure whether that would have actually worked if they'd done that, but that was the point of the people who made Monopoly when it was first created. And then as the game was changed to make it actually fun and entertaining for people, it became something very different. But you still get that undercurrent of cynicism in it, but there's also other stuff built on top of it that makes it a workable game.
Yeah,
honestly, I'd rather play Jones than Monopoly, just on the record.
I like Monopoly on the NES. It moves a lot faster than a real-life game and makes it palpable. But,
I mean, Monopoly is kind of a...
Now, Monopoly is actually sort of cruel in the same way as Jones. The lesson it teaches is that the only person who wins is the only one that doesn't go bankrupt. So you build your landlord empire on the broken bodies of your opponent's financial statuses.
Who are most likely your closest friends and family.
The thing is, though, at least with Monopoly, it feels like you're going somewhere. You're not just, like, drudging through life week after week, not going anywhere.
Going back and forth.
You might not win a Monopoly, but at least you're kind of steadily moving up at a small pace.
You're always going clockwise. Whereas in Jones in the Fast Lane, you can also go counterclockwise, and it doesn't...
Well, you get to choose where you go, and that's, I like that initiative in life.
You can go counterclockwise right to the factory where you blow your entire week. Because you have no social life.
You gotta work at the factory. That's, working at the factory.
That's another thing. There's like...
I wanted to say that... Sorry, Bob. I wanted to answer your question earlier about, games like this, other than The Sims. Honestly, I think, there are, the whole, Dine and Dash sort of style game, all these games where, Cook Serve Delicious, all these, restaurant games, all these games where you basically run a job and then you manage your life kind of outside the job, but not really. I think they're all kind of spiritual successes to what Jones was trying to do, but couldn't get right because they didn't really include the fun part of doing things. They just, you drudge.
Yeah, that's another thing about Jones. There's, you never do anything social. You never do anything fun. I guess there's weekend things, but, you can buy stuff like TVs and such, but you never get any indication of using them. They're just there because you can say you have them. Right. Everything you do is base survival.
Right. Unlike the board game Life, that game, the game of life, you get to marry somebody and have children and things, and even if you lose, it's well, in the game of life, I won because I had loved ones, and this game doesn't have any of that. It's just a solitary quest for stuff.
It's really more of an impersonal, capitalist corporate work drone simulator, right? And the weekend events, they're not really so much events as they are rip-offs. They only exist to drain you money for no good reason, and that's on top of owing rent.
I think it's the single most offensive thing in the game is that every turn you start out and you find out it's oh, by doing this, you lost money. It's I didn't have a choice to do that. I would have done something else. And that's why I would say that if you want to play a really good, competent, modern version of Jones in the Fast Lane, is play Papers, Please.
Yes.
He's right.
I'm not.
That's not that funny. I think it's a good suggestion.
No, it's a great suggestion, but that's why it's funny. Because
I see.
Is a not a cynical game, but it is a dark game that touches on a lot of the same stuff, but it's not dealing with a world that resembles the one that most of our audience lives in. So I can recommend it without saying it can be depressing. Depends on how your outlook is, but at the end of the day, like when you're done, you can go back to your normal life, and it doesn't feel like you're being haunted by the game Papers, Please. If anything, it makes your regular life feel better, because it's like,
plus,
I don't live in like a
Papers, Please actually has you doing something that's clearly defined, very active, and sounds mundane on paper, but is surprisingly fun and quite challenging once you actually get around to it.
It's very well written, and also it has tons and tons of nudity. Which, I mean...
You can turn that off, too, if you're offended by it, but yeah...
It's not... but it is the least... the only thing offensive about the nudity is that it resembles, like, the flabbiness and unattractiveness of your own body.
I mean, it's exactly, like, 100% not titillating. That's the whole point of that.
No, it's just for drug and weapon searches. That's, like...
And it goes to the conceit of the game, like, the basic point of the game, which is, like, the dehumanization of, like, kind of official, customs type work.
Yeah, and
like everybody becomes like a commodity. Everybody's just like a additional baggage coming into crossing an imaginary line.
Yeah, and you wanted to decide
imaginary lines, baggage. This sounds exactly like Jones in the Fast Lane.
It is, but it's better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's time we rank this game. I know you guys are not going to rank it very highly, but I do want to say, like, I feel like it kind of sets out to be a bummer. And I'm not really sure why they did, but I got to give them points for, accomplishing that. I think we're down in the, like, I have no mouth and I must scream range, at least. I mean, I have no mouth and I must scream is a pretty depressing game.
I'm going to put it between Amagon and Caverns of Kafka.
Really?
It fails as what it's trying to do. I'm sorry.
What do you think it's trying to do, and how does it fail?
It's trying to be a board game, but it's a board game where nothing matters, basically. It's just like, instead of just grinding everything out by yourself, you're just grinding out with 3 other people.
But you can't play it by yourself.
Actually, you can.
Right, and you can also play against, like, some, like, little 90s clip arty dude who is, I guess, the titular Jones.
I mean, there's just no competition. It just ends when it feels like it. It just stops.
Yeah, I mean, but... Do you think that, like, tonally it accomplishes what it sets out to do? Or, I mean, as a game, I'm with you. That's why I'm thinking of ranking it pretty low. It's because as a game, it's not very much fun. And it's not very interesting to play. But just because it's depressing, I don't think we can hold that against it. Because that's what it's trying to be. I mean, there are all kinds of stuff out there that is deliberately depressing.
It's not that it's depressing, it's that's not fun. That's what matters to me.
That is true. It is not fun. It's more fun to talk about than it is to play.
I mean, Amagon, say what you want, but it had a pretty clear goal of what it was trying to do, and it did it.
I would put it below... I'm thinking actually above Amagon, but below Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. Because the thing about Amagon is there's almost nothing you can say about it. And although I know it's above Caverns of Kafka, and that's another thing, is like Caverns of Kafka is at least something you can talk about. Like, that's even hard to explain to people why. You just kind of have to play it. But Jones in the Fast Lane, listening to somebody describe the game to you, or like a gameplay scenario, is kind of interesting. It's more interesting than playing the game, and that's not a credit to the game, but it is like interesting stuff can happen in the game. Like, there is something you can have a conversation about it. It is evocative of something, right? But it's not quite as insane as Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. So I don't know. Who disagrees with me on that?
I guess I would accept that. I would not put it any higher.
I can't in good conscience put it any higher. I feel like this is a game that people should probably not play, at least if they are like a young person who feels like they're not getting ahead in life and that everybody's leaving them behind, because it's going to make you feel like garbage, and it's not fair because you are just starting out in life, and Like, even if it takes a little bit longer than you think it did when your parents were kids, that doesn't mean that you should feel bad about it. It is a sad, sad little game that I did not enjoy playing it, and I felt exactly the way you guys are describing it right now, so...